Hugh Freeze is about to close out his first full calendar year as the Auburn football coach. These are definitely two very, very important months coming up, and we're going to talk about just what Hugh Freeze staff and this team needs to do to not only close out this season and the year, but to get things going moving forward. Joined us today on the Auburn Daily Show is a reoccurring guest, Pat Barnes. It's your host, Alex, better known on the socials as at Auburn Memes. And we want to thank everybody out there for checking out the show today. Once again, no matter where you're listening or watching, whether it be YouTube or podcast, we just ask if you feel so inclined, want to support the show, please either like, subscribe, follow, whatever the button says on your platform. Leave us a review, 5 stars, of course, and or shoot us a comment. Helps us out a ton. So now we are going to jump into the show. We want to welcome Pat again. For those who may be new to this episode, Pat is our resident Auburn vigilante. He is out there on the the Auburn cyber webs, fighting the bad narrative, the hot takes, whether you are on social media, whether you are on the various message boards. If you out there, you got a bad Auburn narrative, Pat's going to find you. He's going to check you on it. He is the self-described Auburn hall monitor. Welcome to the show, as always, Pat Barnes.
Thanks for having me back on, Memes. It's been a little quiet on the interwebs the last couple of weeks, and I guess it has something to do with actually winning games. There's always a little bit less excitement on the Auburn message boards when we're doing well as opposed to when we're doing bad. So I've had a stress-free couple of weeks.
So you hadn't had to go anybody lately?
Not as much. There's always the occasional sniping that has to be done, but Auburn is a very reactionary fan base, so they've been happy. I've been happy. We're all good right now.
So we're just waiting on just one bad loss or one close game, just for the "we should have never fired Gus" thread to pop back up, and then we're right back in the cockpit, right?
I think Monday. I think it's very highly likely that that something like that could pop out there.
Okay.
I think UCF may win this weekend. If you believe in Vegas, it sounds like Arkansas's got a better chance to beat us than not. This Monday, we'll see that thread for sure.
Gearing up, just gearing up for it. But you're right. As far as bad narratives go, and this kind of goes across the board, winning here's pretty much almost all of the illness out there. And Auburn has won 2 games back to back, which was very well needed after a 4-game stretch. Doesn't matter how unfavorable those matchups are. When you lose 4 in a row, it's tough. Everybody's going to get antsy. Everybody's going to get impatient. No matter that, every single coach and player can say, you know what, and fan, hey guys, we're not going to win these games. We're not favored. It doesn't matter. People are still going to freak out and just kind of get up in their feels. But we have had 2 good games and got people right. But let me ask you about this question here.
Jeez.
It's no shocker that Auburn had beat 2 of very likely what will be the bottom 2 teams in the SEC.
Yeah.
The past 2 weeks. Now they handled business against them, which is what they need to do. Lord knows they did not need to even keep it close, which they didn't. Do you think that maybe Auburn fans right now might be sitting on a little bit, maybe an inflated bubble of false security, excuse me?
Maybe a little bit, but I will say that it seems like the fan base in general this time around is doing a better job not swinging the pendulum too hard on the sunshine side. I'm always a big proponent of you got to keep perspective. Don't get too high, don't get too low. You got to look at it from a bird's eye view and kind of keep the whole season in perspective. And they've done a pretty good job this past week of reminding themselves, hey, these are the 2 worst teams in the SEC we've beaten the last 2 weeks. So it doesn't mean everything is solved and it's hunky dory. But I think it's right for Auburn fans to have a positive outlook after the last 2 weeks. If anything, it shows that proof of concept is starting to stick, and it shows that the offensive system they're trying to implement is not completely broken, like a lot of us feared. I think during that 4-game losing streak, I think it's clear now a lot more of that has to do just with the talent we're playing with. But I think they've done a pretty good job of keeping a muzzle on it the last 2 weeks. But make no mistake, I'm expecting negativity with a vengeance on Monday if we lose to Arkansas this weekend.
Okay, so I want to get to that in just a second because I predicted the loss to Arkansas. Unfortunately, I'm just a little nervous. We'll talk about that. Talk about that in a little bit later. But as far as to keep with the theme of the episode, what we're trying to get at here. So kind of the analogy I'm getting at is Auburn's bringing the landing gear down.
Right.
Coming down, we're at the final stretch of the season, final stretch of the year, and this is when stuff starts. This is when all the moves start. This is the culmination of everything that we got rocking short term, and this is going to be really the beginning of everything got to get going to get it rolling long term. So what do you always say? Seasons are predetermined. Finish my sentence here.
About 3 years prior.
Okay. So what Auburn's batting for to close off recruiting, transfer portal, all that this month, mostly in December with early signing day, but you can, we'll sprinkle a little bit for regular signing day in this. Whereas this is going to be determining the next few years of Auburn football in seemingly the next 2 months. Am I
Right.
fairly accurate statement there?
You are, and maybe 3 years is even too long at this point. I mean, maybe it's getting to the point now where it seems like 2 years is the appropriate window. The
Right.
recruiting class you land this year, for instance, would be a big deal in the 2025 season, and so on and so forth. But
Yeah, and then even with the portal too.
right, portal's huge. Now, hopefully, I think everybody's hoping that we don't get as many portal players this year. Well, let me rephrase. We don't have to rely on as many portal players this year. I think the hope is that maybe we get about 10 transfers this year as opposed to 20. And then we load up on this high school class, about 20 to 25 of those guys, and don't lose a bunch of the guys that we want to keep. And we should be a better team next year. But it's talent acquisition is the name of the game in college football. And Auburn is doing a good job of that right now.
And this is another season that comes up as well. Flipness. That is
Flipping,
a
yep,
season that can giveth, and it is a season that can desperately take away. And the issue when you are recruiting well, especially on the top end of your classes, like Hugh Freeze is doing, is you can be a victim of flipness. Why Auburn hasn't been a victim of flipness during flipness season in years past? Well, they really didn't have many guys that were worth flipping from other schools that could flip from Auburn.
yep,
Now you got some guys at the top of your class that they absolutely can do that. So that is going to, and just fans have not had that mindset. They have not had that focus. They have not had that worry in a while. Cause like I said, there hadn't been anybody worth losing to a school that could come in there and do it. That is not the case this year. So that is going to be a whole nother battle that I don't think people have even really begun to start to prepare for and fathom is now these top guys that are in your class, they're finishing up their senior seasons, they're putting out more tape. The big dogs have start licking their chops saying, well, there's not many uncommitted players out there. If we want to pad our class a little bit more, we got to start poaching.
Now, unless
So,
unless I'm not thinking of somebody off the top of my head right now, I don't think we've had somebody that we've really wanted to keep so far with this staff that has decommitted and gone somewhere else. And in fact, we had some pretty huge news this week with DeAndre Carter kind of coming out on Twitter and saying, "Hey, I'm 100% locked into Auburn now." That's our lone offensive lineman commit right now. He's a high 4-star interior guy, a huge piece of the future for Auburn. And he is sounds like he has told Texas thanks, but no thanks. He tried hard, but I'm going to Auburn next year. So that's a huge positive when looking ahead to this recruiting
yeah.
class. Just that sign in and of itself.
Yeah, because that was the big heat that Texas was kind of breathing down the throat to grab him, and with the momentum Texas and Sark's having them joining the SEC, I mean that's a legitimate fear that Texas is one of those big dogs. But if you can ward off Texas, huge victory for Auburn and this
Right.
staff. And I mean Carter's a good. I mean that's a big time recruit to have. Like I said, lone offensive lineman. That's another thing they need to add to this class. We can talk about that a little bit later here in just a second. Actually, you know what? What better time than right now? Let's talk about this recruiting class because this is definitely something that will go long term and come back short term.
Okay.
What do we so Auburn right now, for the listeners out there, 17th nationally. I'm looking at on threes numbers of 24/7 and or rivals. That's something slightly different. You can jump in there. Ninth in the SEC. Now, obviously, they just lost Fat this past week, who decommitted to Auburn, went to Missouri. I think there were some. I would actually say, and you gauge the pulse of the fan base, but really it seems like everybody kind of kept a level head about that one. Would you agree, or do you see any folks freaking out about that one?
I think it's one of those things where people would have freaked out, but the people that were plugged in and who keep track of this stuff got ahead of this early and said, "Hey, this is not a situation that he's going to somewhere else because they're a better opportunity for him. This was an Auburn decision. I just don't think that he's done what he needed to do on the field. I don't know what's going on off the field with him. I won't speculate on that. One, because it's probably something we shouldn't do, and two, it's not something that I personally have knowledge of, so I won't do it. But it just sounds like there wasn't enough that was done there, and Auburn has decided to go in a different direction.
Right. And I think that's why it's so important to stay ahead of these narratives, because when people just see the headline, they immediately freak out. Everything is always going to worst case scenario. The sky's falling. And just to be real here, just Auburn fans the past few years, things have been a little rocky. It always seems like a little bit of bad news leads to an avalanche. And I think the
Yep.
consistency that this staff is really trying to get to of building a solid foundation is saying that's not it. Sometimes
Right.
things like this just naturally happen, and sometimes say, you know what, if there's a little bit of bad news, it's fine. We'll weather the storm and be, hey, give us a day or two, we'll be right back at it, and we're going to forget this even happened. Where, it wasn't just smoke, there's fire, it's smoke, there's a forest fire.
Right.
So, and yeah, we don't have the infrastructure to put this thing out, and just kept going and going and going. So, but overall, where were you hoping to see this class end nationally? Like, what would you want their
So
ranking to be?
I have a little bit different view on it. Um,
Okay.
I don't care necessarily about the final ranking on these sites. What I do care about is going down the commitment list and seeing. I want all these players to be somebody that we beat out a team that I perceive to be on our level for them. So if you were going down the list, and you can stop me whenever, but I'll just start from the
Let's hit
top.
the top of the. We'll start with the top four of the class. Perry
Okay,
Thompson.
beat out Alabama. We beat out Alabama for them. So obviously, huge rival, top five recruiting juggernaut, huge win there.
Riddick.
Beat out Georgia and Alabama for them, our two biggest rivals. So huge win there.
Joseph Phillips.
Beat out Georgia for them, huge victory. That was our first big recruiting win under Freeze, I think, especially for this class. That we were able to get a player that Georgia desperately wanted and get him to commit to Auburn early. So beat Georgia for them, huge win there.
Walker White.
Beat Clemson for them in January, and maybe I misspoke on saying Phillips. Walker White was a huge win because Clemson's. I mean, I still think they're pretty much not a recruiting juggernaut, but definitely a recruiting power, and they're definitely more well established. And we beat Clemson head to head for them very early in Freeze's tenure, so a huge win there.
And look at the quarterbacks Clemson's had in the last few years, and that's been a destination for quarterbacks. So big
Yep,
deal. And we just obviously mentioned Carter with Texas trying to
Texas,
go after him.
right,
So, and obviously the list can go on as you kind of go down the list, but kind of gives you an idea. And maybe previous years, it's like you're looking at a guy. It's like, oh, we beat Kansas for this guy. Okay.
right,
Oh man, this guy was neck and neck with Auburn and Texas Tech. It's like, okay, that's where you got to start looking at where you're. Not to say that good player you can't win those battles, but when that seems to be the crux of your class, and you're not competing against consistent top 10 national programs in recruiting, well, guess what? You're not doing on the field, competing against them on the field. So yeah, and that is where the bar here is. But they've only got 16 commits in this class currently.
they're at 16, and I think the idea here is we're trying to get somewhere between 20 and 25, and it sounds like where our focus has kind of shifted to more high school players. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer to that 20, there's 25 commits. But even if not, as long as they're quality recruits we're bringing in, I'm going to be pretty happy with it. And
November
I
8th.
kind of wanted to contrast that with, and we can get into more of this in future episodes. Kind of just touch on it right now.
Yeah.
If you think back to Gus's last classes, so 2017 through 2020, I think maybe there was only 3 or 4 players in all those classes that we beat Alabama and Georgia for straight up. And I'm talking about guys that they actually wanted. I'm not talking about guys that they kept on the back burner and had as plan Bs, plan Cs. Those are guys that they actually wanted. I can think of Tank, Zykevius Walker, Owen Popo, Bo Nix. Can you think of anybody else besides those guys?
For 2017 through 2020.
Right. So the last class that I remember having with Gus that we were competing on Alabama and Georgia level was that 2016 class where we got Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown. And after that, recruiting kind of fell off a cliff. The rankings were still up there, but Gus was kind of padding the stats with 4 stars that Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and Ohio State didn't really have any interest in.
Yeah, there's some guys in here. There may be some in the 20. I don't necessarily, obviously, I'm not as deep into it as you. There may be some guys in the 2018 class they could have
Read through some of those
potentially.
guys. I could probably name who he beat out for him.
Okay, let's see here. I'm looking at the top of the class here. Matthew Hill.
Beat out Clemson, but Clemson wanted him as a safety. So we kind of had the position that he wanted to play receiver, and we had the position advantage
And
over
he
him.
didn't end up playing at Auburn, so it didn't matter.
Nope.
Is that Coinus Miller?
Alabama did want him, but he lasted how many? 2 years, I think.
Yeah, didn't do a whole lot. Didn't do a whole lot at Auburn, so it didn't matter too much. Were they after? What about? Let's see. Then the other top guys they were Smoke Monday and Harold Joyner, the 2018 class.
We beat out Clemson for Smoke Monday, but Harold Joyner, I think LSU sort of wanted him, but not really. And that was kind of when LSU wasn't recruiting to the level that they started recruiting to in Orgeron's later years. And then Michigan State was the other guy for him. So that's another guy where it was like this, the ranking was high, but a lot of the big time schools didn't really have much interest in him.
And shout out to you just to be able to spit this just completely from memory.
It's freaky, man.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, somebody out there is going to think like, I want to clarify because someone's like, oh, he's looking at his computer. No, this is a
Nah.
shooting from the hip here. But yeah, and then of course in 2019 you had Bo, Papo. What about? I remember wasn't Handy fairly? Weren't a lot of people out after him?
No, actually, he was a big recruit, and I was excited about that kid. But I think we beat out Ole Miss for him. I don't think it was like I don't think maybe Alabama was sniffing around, but I don't think they had sold out for him yet. I think Ole Miss was the main competition for him.
Okay. And then let me look at 2020. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of heat here, but just to kind of continue with the exercise, just for folks out there who are listening, the point being is there's a direct correlation of who Auburn was beating out for recruits versus kind of what the team talent level started to turn into. And
Yeah.
I guess the last big guy that would have been, oh, maybe I'm thinking of Jay Hardy.
No, see, nobody was really interested in that kid. We beat out Tennessee for him, and that
Okay,
was Tennessee at a much lower point than they are now.
I always get Jay Hardy and Handy. I always got them mixed up for obvious reasons because I'm
Last
dyslexic
names.
enough to where that's going to slip on my head. Just both
Yeah.
playing similar positions, and then I guess the other big recruit of that class would have been Zykevius Walker. Right
Now
below
we did
Tank.
beat out Georgia for him, and I remember that being a surprise. And I don't. Hey, I was excited to see Zacchaeus play the way he did this past weekend. That was the first time since his freshman year. I was like, hey there, you're making some plays. So that was exciting.
Yeah, and that was a big. I mean, that was a big transfer win about 11 months ago when they convinced him to come out of the portal. So hopefully he can start kind of coming to his own and just, once again, what I've been saying, better late than never. So as far as the recruiting class go, really what Auburn is going to be looking for is going to be at minimum 4 more players to add on there, probably a maximum of about 9. So that would put them, like I said, between the 20 and 25 mark. And that is
Right.
going to be a very important deal. Now, how many do you think they get by early signing day? And do you think they add some more on, I guess, is it regular signing day still? Do we call it late signing day? I mean, do we even know what the like?
I think it's I think regular signing day is the official name or just signing day, but everybody calls it late signing day.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like I think we need to reevaluate our. I think we need to reevaluate our terms on that one because
Yeah.
if like 80% of your guys are signing on early signing day, I'm just kind of making that number up, but you know, y'all get the idea. Is it is it really even early? I don't know. We
If
gotta.
Yeah, December. It's always mid-December, I think.
Yeah, I don't know who decides the terms to coin it, but we got to do some evaluation on a signing day culture because I'm with you. I miss the I know you do
Yeah.
too. You would literally take off work. I miss the pure
I didn't take off work. I was taking off school at the time. There's a difference.
essence and romance of what true signing day was. It just kind of gave you this like light in February.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like early signing day is kind of taken away the romance of what signing day really used to mean.
It has, and they didn't really think it through, especially with the transfer portal. But it comes at an awful time
Yeah.
when there's a bunch of prep that's having to go in, and there's a bunch of coaching changes that haven't been finalized, so players really don't know what's going to happen at the school they're at. The rumor is there's a bunch of proposals going before the NCAA to get rid of early signing day. Basically, say, hey, it was a mistake. Can we just go back to the February signing day? And it sounds like there's at least a 50-50 shot that that's going to pass at some point in the next couple of years. So we both may get our wish in the near future that it'll only be one signing day in February again.
I would be all for that.
Yeah,
Just because you
I
still
agree.
got guys playing high school championships, and then with the playoffs going on too. Because I mean that was the other issue is you've got a whole nother football game in there. You got Christmas time. It just logistically there's a lot going on. And then some teams are having, I mean, they're playing so many more bowls now, just a lot of weird things.
Yeah, if you're going to enroll and be there in spring, that's good. That's fine. But the guys who are going to finish out their senior years probably should be signing in February.
Yeah, and I guess you're right on that. I do think, yeah, if you're early enrollee, early signing day, and I've even had another theory on this, and tell me if this is just crazy, but what if like it's a deal where if you've been verbally committed to a school for maybe let's say 6+ months, you can sign early early signing day.
Say that again.
Like let's say I've spitball this theory. Let's say you've been verbally committed. I'm just making up a time period for X number of months before you can
Okay.
sign early signing day.
Like you have to be committed for X amount of months in order to sign at early signing day.
Yeah, to be eligible to sign at early signing day.
I don't know. I think commitments are pointless, honestly. So
Okay. So then we should
I
just do now, or if you're so caveat there, if you are enrolling early, obviously early signing day. If not, move it to
yes.
February.
Yeah, I think that should be the rule. I mean, that's what it was for a long time and it was fine. I can't remember the reasoning for early signing day. It's been a couple years now, but I think it does more harm than good now that we've looked at about 5 years of it.
Just too much. And the other issue with it too, and obviously Auburn dealt with this last year, is all the coaching changes you have that time of year as well.
Yep.
It just puts a lot of coaches behind the eight ball. I mean, just look at what happened with Hugh Freeze. I mean, he's essentially, yeah, November 29th, 8th,
Yeah.
he's hired.
He had like 2 weeks before early signing day, and
Right.
he did
Versus him having,
incredible work in those 2 weeks. But think about what he could have done
yeah,
had
two
signing
months.
day in February. Right? Yeah.
So yeah, that's a whole different deal. But it is what it is. Auburn has got to factor in all these things, and then too with transfer season being there. So we kind of went over the commitment class. They're at 16, they're 17th. Get the guys in there. Don't worry about the rankings per se nationally. Don't worry about the perception. Focus more on getting the right guys, getting the roster balanced correctly, and
Right.
evaluating strong. So you're telling people don't
Look at
don't
who we're
fall
beating
for
it.
the yeah.
Right. Look who we're beating out. And you know what? It's kind of like it's gonna one thing is gonna lead to the other. If you're beating out Alabama and Georgia for these players, you're gonna have a high rating. Uh, I would say don't just look at that number and judge success or failure based off solely the number of the ranking because
Don't
there's a bunch of factors that go into that. The amount of players in the class. Some one service may just not be paying attention to a kid and they rank him way low. Like I remember Camden Brown was a 3-star his whole career, and then Georgia comes in like a week before signing day and gives him an offer, and they all bumped him up to a 4-star. Or at least Rivals or somebody did. He didn't just become a 4-star overnight when Georgia offered him. Like he was always that talent. It just took one school offering him for somebody to acknowledge, oh, maybe he is a 4-star talent. So you never know what recruiting service has not reviewed a kid to properly to give him the right ranking. Look
well
at
into
who else is recruiting them. Is what I'm saying.
was it into last summer? Cam Coleman he had no
Yeah,
ranking.
he's a 3-star, I think, and
No,
all of a
no
sudden
he
he
was
runs into
literally he was
camp.
no he was unranked. end of last summer.
That's right. He was unranked last summer. You're
Yeah,
saying, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You're
yeah.
right.
When he came to Harson's Big Cat Weekend, he was an unranked recruit.
Yeah, and he hadn't had much playing. I understand that he hadn't had much playing time at Central Phoenix City yet, but I do remember looking at his profile, and I think 24/7 or On3 had him as like a top 10 player, and Rivals had him as like a 3-star unranked outside of the top
Yeah, but
300. So this is like what type of stuff we're dealing with here.
yeah, but what the I guess the point of me saying that is just for people out there who may not know as much about this is those rankings can move very, very, very quickly. And I
Right.
mean, they are based upon opinion.
And
So
fact of the matter is, the guys who are doing these rankings are not much more qualified than you or I. Otherwise, they would be working for a college football program. There would be a college football program paying them handsome money to do this job if they they were that good at it. At the end of the day, a lot of what their rankings go into is who's offering these kids anyway.
it's very much and this will be a very unpopular opinion for folks who work for some of these team sites, but I think it's one I'd go into the ring to fight. But it's a by and large, it's a very reactionary thing.
Right.
Oh, we got word that Alabama's looking at this player. Maybe we need to look a little closer at him. Oh, his tape's looking pretty good. Oh shoot, Ohio State's talking to him too. 4 stars.
And there is
So,
merit to that because if Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State wants a kid, he probably is one of the best players in America. But
right, but you're
all that
typically
is to
seeing
point
the
out that
chicken.
right,
You're
you got
seeing
what
the
I'm
chicken
saying.
come after the egg.
Yeah,
It's not a situation where it's like, all right, well, this eighth grader's a 4 star, and y'all just wait, trust us. So, but anyway, we're
yeah.
getting a little off topic. Getting a little off topic on that. We kind of hit the long term situation. Of course, the recruiting. We don't know what is going to happen in the transfer portal. We don't know who Auburn is going to get. We obviously don't know who Auburn's going to leave. Now, as far as guys, I was talking with Mike G earlier about this, and I think he said the number, it was either 23 or 26 guys are going to be aging out of the team just due to eligibility. Is that number
Yeah.
sound right?
I haven't looked at who's all the total amount of numbers leaving. I can kind of off the top of my head say I think there's like 4 or 5 guys I think that are going to be gone from the offense that are starters, and maybe 3 or 4. No, maybe more on the defense because the whole secondary is going to be gone for the most part. So if I had
Yeah,
to
and I mean,
guess, as far as the starting lineup goes, who's going to be out on offense? It's going to be Hooks, Britton, and Stutz. So there's 3 guys there, and then the way Jarquez is playing, he may be apt to jump too. I think
yeah, no, it was
the way
like
he's
two
playing,
weeks
he's getting a
ago.
good grade.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, people were saying, "Oh, Jarquez is coming." Now it's looking like Jarquez is leaving. So, okay, we'll ask this quick question, this because it does, 2 weeks. Do you think he can get to 1,000 yards this season, bowl game
It's
included?
possible. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I'm saying this, but it is possible. Now, Arkansas's rushing defense numbers didn't look that impressive to me, so he's going to have. But it's still going to be tough to get 100. I think he's going to have to do that. He's going to have to get close to 200 against New Mexico State. Alabama's going to be tough sled, and their defense is really good.
Yeah.
But that bowl game is going to be big for him too, as far as getting to 1,000.
Well, that's the thing there, and I think it's very important to just talking about what the staff can do for the end of the year. I think just from recruiting, from just every bit of momentum, just to say we had 1,000 yard, and just to add the fact he had to miss a game. I think that's a big sell.
Yeah,
Despite all these things, we still got 1,000 yard rusher. I think that's because even I still remember this in 2012. Trey Mason barely got 1,000 yards, and it was just one of the very few things you could kind of hang your hat on. And people can argue moral victories or tit for tat, but like that's a recruiting pitch. Like it or not, that is something you can sell. Hey, we've had 1,000 yard rusher X number of years in a row.
yeah, I agree.
That always looks good on paper. You always want to get to the 1,000 mark. 999, no, get over that mark. I think they need to try everything they can to feed Jarquez to hit that mark, not only for him, but for Auburn as a whole, and just for the staff and just momentum. And that's a good mark in the year with.
So
So
let's go through this real quick though. So
mhm.
let's count Hunter in here. So you're probably going to lose Hunter, Hooks, which he hadn't done much. I'm not even sure I should count him as a starter. So Hunter, Hooks, Javarius Johnson, Britton,
You
and
losing. Well, I
then
guess that's not a starter. Okay, I'm sorry.
who are you talking about?
I was going to mention Mardner and Shorter, but
Who?
Nick Mardner and Shorter.
Who?
I see what you're doing there. Do you want me to say it? Do you want me to say it one? Do you want me to say it
Nah,
one more
you got
time?
it. You
Okay.
got it. And then Cameron Stud. So 4 or 5 guys on starters on offense. So you're still bringing 6 or 7 back on offense that started this year. And if you run through the defense, as far as starters go today, you're probably going to lose Marcus Harris. He's playing really well, though he can't come back for another year. You're going to lose most of your secondary: DJ James, Nehemiah, Simpson, and Puckett. So it looks like 5 guys on defense. So we should bring back the majority of our starters on offense and defense, add some freshmen, add some good transfers in there. We should be a better team next year.
Well, here's the sell that the staff has to do. You still got to fight the portal, and then
Yeah.
you potentially have the conversation of guys going to the league. I would say the only guys that are potentially safe from the portal are the guys who have already transferred in from the portal and have burned that year who haven't graduated. And there's going to be some guys that leave, so that's going to be the other battle that they've got to face. On top of padding off this high school class, they've got to win it up in the portal here, and it's all kind of coming down to this, while still getting the proof of concept on the field. So that's the long term play that all these guys got to do, and we'll talk about this a whole lot more when it gets here. We're just going to kind of tease it right now. There's going to be some coaching carousel coming up. There's going to be
Right.
I'm not going to, I don't want to even begin to speculate, but I don't want to get that. I don't want to be that guy that started the rumor, but it happens every year. There's going to be coaches that go, and unfortunately, they go before they come. So the bad news always comes before the good. And there's going to be, and the problem is what's going to make this exponentially worse. And this is where I guarantee you're going to have to suit up to go fight the loudmouths out there about this one. Is Auburn's got a lot of alumni on this coaching staff right now.
Yeah.
And there's always a soft spot for alumni. And what's going to happen if one of these alumni ends up moving on for whatever reason or another, people are going to go ballistic
They
because
are.
they don't want to see
And
them go.
as far as alumni goes, I'm trying to think who's on the staff, but I think all the alumni coaches, as far as coaching goes, are pretty good coaches. I would just caution to say if somebody leaves and we don't put much of a fight up for them, or it seems like we don't put much of a fight up for them, there's probably a reason for that. So before you jump off a ledge and say everything's burned to the ground, just try to keep that in mind.
Right. And the deal that I'm trying to get at too with this season, I say the season is, the end of the year. And it's funny because December used to be such a boring time.
Yeah.
Like
Now
after the chip.
transfer portal recruiting is even more exciting than high school recruiting. I mean, they're in there for a week or two, and it's fast
It's
and
speed dating.
furious. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's college football's 90 Day Fiance. I mean, it's just like, we're going, bam, let's get it. Boom, we're married.
Yep.
And there's going to be somebody who roasts me for making that comparison, but I'm here for it.
You watch
But
those type of shows. I don't watch them.
I'm not denying it. I denied it once. Catch me watching TLC on a Sunday night.
It's more
But
for you. Sunday
it's all
night
right. Yeah,
football.
yeah. I mean, TLC Sunday Night Football. It's a toss. Just got to see what games are on. But
Sad.
geez, this is getting bad. But yeah, it's electric. It's fast. It's exciting. And there's not a waiting game. Just bam, bam, bam. There's so much happens. So yeah, I mean, it has made what once was a very, like I said, boring time of the year a lot more fun. And this is something that staff's got to go. But like I said, there's so many moving parts. You got your high school guys, you got your early signing days, you've got bowl game preps, you've got guys who are potentially going to go to the league, you got guys that might want to sit out for the bowl, you senior bowls, you all just numerous things that can happen all during that time period. So many moving parts. And this is something that staff has got to deal with because, I mean, if they take care of business against New Mexico State, they're going to go to a bowl game.
Yep.
So should be good there. Now, if they clinch it with Arkansas this weekend, then you're just going to a little bit better of a bowl game. And
Right.
I think that would be really good to get that monkey off Auburn's back. So that's what's going to happen there. But that's all going to be in December. We got the month of November right now. So what do we need to do to win November, literally and figuratively?
Keep recruiting at a very high level,
Hmm.
which really doesn't have much to do with on the field stuff at this point. That bet's kind of been made, and this staff has proven that they're very good at it. So I don't really think that's something that Auburn fans should fear. That even if we lose to Arkansas and Alabama, that it could fall apart. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. I think the two games that we would have lost that would have affected that would have been the two we just played, and we won them pretty handily.
Yeah.
So we should be safe there. Uh, so basically, at this point, we're just trying to put good showings on the field. I think we're going to keep the guys we got. If we were to beat Arkansas, if we were to make Alabama a really respectable showing, you're going to get some flips anyway. But maybe we get one or two flips we weren't expecting. They see the improvement of going from a 5-7 team to a 7-5 or an 8-4 team, and they want to be a part of a build here where there's a brand new football facility, energy is high, good coaching staff. It'd be tough to turn that down, especially when a lot of other situations in the SEC kind of seem to be in flux, especially in the next couple of years. So ideally, you beat Arkansas, you beat New Mexico State. Maybe you don't beat Arkansas, but you put up respectable showings, beat New Mexico State, go to a bowl game, pack the stadium out for the Iron Bowl with recruits, show them an electric atmosphere, get them to want to come play games in this stadium. And Iron Bowls in the future where the environment's just bananas like it usually is. I think it's really important that Auburn fans show up, get loud for that.
And pray that that's a 6 o'clock kickoff.
2:30 gets pretty loud in there too. So as long as it's not going to be a morning game, I think Iron Bowl, the atmosphere of the Iron Bowl is always electric. I'm not really too worried about that.
I couldn't tell you the last time they've had an 11 a.m. Iron Bowl.
I don't think there has been one.
At
If
least
there
not
has,
one
I
on a
don't remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, at least not one that was on a Saturday. I mean, not in modern TV televised football. Yeah, so that would be nice if they could get that to be a night game. No more CBSs coming really, really soon. So, but yeah, they only had one 11 a.m. game this season. It was away. So that's just
Yep.
that's called the Jimbo effect right there.
That's right.
But I'm gonna bug for a second here. A hypothetical bug.
Okay, let's hear it.
Good, bad, or ugly, let's just say Auburn wins out for the season.
I'm going to be stunting on the haters is what's going to happen.
coming in full force.
Yeah. There'll be no stopping me. My ego will grow to the size of the Empire State Building. Y'all won't be near the end of it.
Okay. So that's where we're at there.
Yeah.
I'll be right there with you. I think if Auburn, because I mean, if they went out, then everything else gets exponentially. I mean, the recruiting, the headlines, the momentum.
I mean, sky's the limit. If we went out, sky's the limit for recruiting. There's nobody that's going to be safe at another school if we really want them.
Yeah. So obviously, I don't think realistically we think that happens, but that is the case. Now, obviously, aside from the very unlikely worst case scenario, Auburn loses out. I don't think you lose to Mexico State. They're probably the worst team Auburn's faced all year.
Yeah.
Or one. I mean,
one
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how they would fare up against Sanford, but they've had some rough showings.
We're not going to lose to New Mexico State.
You're not going to lose to Mexico State. So what do you think there is a worst case scenario realistically? Because we already said the best.
I mean, worst case, obviously there's always a worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is you lose to Arkansas and Bama, which could likely, I think it's probably more likely than not that happens if you look at it today. I don't think it's going to negatively affect our future if we lose both those games. I think we've shown that, hey, we're beating the team. Our concepts are working against the teams that we have more talent than. These other teams we've got less talent than, or there's been other factors going on. I think recruits needed to see what they needed to see this year. The energy is still pretty high. I'm not too worried about recruiting being negatively affected if we lose to Arkansas and Alabama.
In realistic scenario, you either beat Arkansas or keep it very, very close.
Right.
And then you want to keep it respectable with Alabama. And
right.
we're still sailing this thing in the sunset, full steam, full head of wind in the sails. We're rolling.
And let me make it clear. I'm not satisfied with a 6-6 season. But I do think a 6-6 season still keeps us on the path to being a successful program in the future.
rebuild.
So that's why, right? The rebuild is still well on its way. That hadn't gone off the tracks. Let me put it that
Year
way.
zero, right? And then we'll probably have another follow up episode here, maybe probably peak off season, talking about all right the expectations of
What
technical year
Auburn should
two.
be.
Yeah, what is it? What does it look like? Because here it is just get through it, build it right. But now it's like, okay, what do we expect? And I think we'll get there. But the next 2 months of Auburn football, short and long term, a lot of momentum here. They absolutely have a whole lot on the line, and these next 2 months is going to define. And for Auburn fans out there aren't paying attention to it. We've been saying it. These next few months are going to be big and are going to determine a lot of what happens in the future. This is a
Indeed.
time to be paying attention because if they win big over the next 2 months, be expecting them to win big and then years to follow. And if
Right.
things don't go great the next 2 months, then it might get a little scary. And then there's some then the next milestones you got to hit starting in a lot. The stakes start getting a lot higher. So, but so far they being the staff has done what they needed to do. We're going to trust that they keep on keeping on, take care of business, and that we got some good news to follow and do what they need to do against Arkansas, roll that into New Mexico State. As you mentioned, get that atmosphere absolutely electric for the Iron Bowl, take care of business, win the month of December. And that right there is going to conclude this episode. We want to thank our show sponsor, Opelika Rage Room. As always, for being a great supporter of the show and what we've got going on. They support us. We'd love for you to go support them. Whether you need to go do it because you need to blow off steam or you want to try something new and fun. If you're in the Auburn Opelika area, whether you live there, you're coming through town for a game, 12 to 10 p.m. every day, make an appointment, go see them, go smash some stuff. If you're in the Birmingham area or coming through, location number 2 is up there, Birmingham Rage Room. Go check them out. Want to thank them for being a great sponsor of the show. That's going to conclude us for tonight. Want to thank Pat, as always, for jumping on the show. We can't shout out his socials because, like I said, Batman does not take off the masks. Pat Barnes would not be Pat Barnes if you actually knew who Pat Barnes was. And, of course, you can find me on socials at Auburn Memes, doing all sorts of nonsense over there. And, of course, make sure to check out Auburn Daily, Twitter, Facebook. Check out all the awesome stuff that staff is putting out online, always on top of the stories. About to get recruiting rolled out, or they're about to get a lot more recruiting content rolled out there as well. So make sure to check them out. Well, thank everybody for listening and tune in to tomorrow's episode. We're going to have on Auburn Daily writer Andrew Stefaniak to come on and preview the matchup for Auburn versus Arkansas this upcoming weekend. That is going to conclude us for here. We will be back at you then. Thank you for